Andrew Paxton is late for work. He manages to pick up the coffee for his boss and rushes across the busy streets of New York to reach Colden Books where he works. His boss, Margaret, is the editor-in-chief, and she is fixing up an interview with a client on her way to office. As Andrew enters the office, he bumps into someone and spills Margaret's coffee. He trades his tickets to a baseball game for the shirt of one of his colleagues. Ladies at the entrance send word of Margaret's arrival, and everyone seemed to be working. Andrew updates her schedule for the day and leaves to make the arrangements. Margaret takes her coffee but notices a phone number written on the cup. Andrew lets her know that he spilled her coffee, and she is surprised to learn that he drinks the coffee same as hers. Andrew brushes it off as pure coincidence. Right then, the phone rings, and Andrew learns that Bob is ready for them now. Andrew goes out to send message to everyone that she will be outside, and everyone gets back to be seen working again. Andrew joins her and asks her about the manuscript he gave her. She doesn't like it, but he still tries to persuade her to try publishing the novel. Right then, Margaret notices the guy he exchanged shirts with and tells him that he truly is pathetic ordering the same coffee for such scenarios. As they reach Bob's room, she tells Andrew to just watch. Bob welcomes them, but Margaret lets him know that he is fired. She tells him since he cannot manage to seal the deal with the client, he isn't needed here. Andrew is surprised to learn of this and closes the door. Bob puts forth an argument that the task is impossible, but Margaret lets him know that the client approved this morning over a phone call. She gives him 2 months to find another job and asks him to tell everyone that he resigned. They go back, but Bob comes out calling her a poisonous bitch. He starts shouting that she is firing him since she is scared of him. However, Margaret lets him know that if she hears another word from him, she is gonna have security throw him out. As they return, she tells Andrew to come in this weekend to go over Bob's files and manuscripts. However, Andrew has plans to go home for his grandmother Gammy's 90th birthday, but she declines. Sometime later, he calls his mom to inform about his situation. Margaret comes to his desk, and Andrew reveals that it was his family, and they tell him to quit every single day. Right then, Andrew informs Margaret that the chairman wants to meet her. She leaves, telling him to come get her in 10 minutes. The chairman lets her know that they got a call from the immigration office that her visa application is being denied and she is getting deported. Margaret is shocked to learn of this and asks if there's anything they can do. He tells her that they can reapply, but still she has to leave the country for at least a year. Shocked as is, she goes to tell that she can manage things from Toronto, but the chairman cuts in, stating that they cannot employ someone who is deported. He also tells her that until everything is resolved, they will have Bob take her place. Well, she just fired the guy, but the chairman mentions that Bob is the only guy in the building with enough experience to take her place. At this time, Andrew comes knocking and tells Margaret that an important client called. Margaret thinks of a crazy idea and signals Andrew to join her. Margaret reveals to the chairman that Andrew and her are getting married. She tries her best to come up with a story of how they fell in love. Andrew is speechless, and the chairman gets what is happening and tells her to make it legal. Margaret and Andrew make it back downstairs, and the news soon spreads around the office. They ridicule Andrew for choosing Margaret. Coming back to reality, Andrew asks her what the hell just happened. She tells him that she did it for him. Since they are going to bring Bob back, he is guaranteed to get fired, and all the time he spent running behind her will go to waste. And after the required time, they can just get divorced, is what she says. And even though this is illegal, Andrew agrees. They visit the immigration office, and Margaret cuts the line to get her file moved, but they are called in for a separate meeting. Gilbertson welcomes them and gets straight to the point, asking them if they are committing fraud with the marriage, just so Margaret doesn't get deported. He says that they got a call from Bob informing of this. Margaret reveals that Bob is an ex-employee and is trying to get back at her. She tries to rush the process with her attitude, and Andrew feels the whole thing going south. Gilbertson reveals that it is not a simple process, and there are different steps to the whole thing. First, they will be asked the same questions in separate rooms. Secondly, their phone records will be checked. And finally, their neighbors and co-workers will be interviewed. If at any point their answers don't match, Margaret will be deported indefinitely, and Andrew will have committed a felony and asked to pay a fine of $250,000 and will be in prison for 5 years. He asks Andrew if he got anything to say, but Andrew uses this chance to say that with his promotion to editor coming up, they couldn't let anyone in the office find out about their relationship. Following this, Gilbertson asks whether they have told their parents, and Margaret reveals that she is an orphan, and they were gonna reveal their relationship to Andrew's family this weekend at his grandmother's 90th birthday. Gilbertson is still doubtful and asks where that might be. Margaret asks Andrew to jump in, and he reveals that his family lives in Sitka, Alaska. Margaret is shocked to learn this. However, she still says that they will be going to Alaska this weekend. Gilbertson agrees and schedules their next meeting on Monday. As they leave, Margaret goes on her usual run to give off her commands, but Andrew cuts her in asking whether she heard everything they were told inside. Margaret says that there is no way he is getting promoted, but Andrew tells her that he quits and walks away. With what's at stake, Margaret gives in and agrees to his requests. The next day, they board the flight, and Andrew lets her know that he already knows everything about her, but she got only 4 days to learn everything about him. Intrigued, she asks him a couple of questions to find that he knows the right answers. As the plane lands, Andrew notices his mom and Gammy waiting. Andrew goes ahead to greet them, and he introduces Margaret to his mom, Grace, and Gammy, Annie. Margaret thanks them for having her join them this weekend. Gammy is thrilled, and as they drive into town, Margaret notices every store they cross having the Paxton name and asks him why he hasn't mentioned about their family businesses. Gammy mentions Andrew being so modest, and they drive further ahead. They reach the dock, and Margaret is confused since they should be checking in their hotel right now. Grace has canceled their reservation and asks her to stay at home. They ride the boat, and Margaret is shocked to discover that the mansion in sight is his home. Reaching shore, Grace tells him that they have planned a small welcoming party for them. They head inside, and Andrew introduces Margaret to everyone, and his dad, Joe, welcomes them. He also reveals to the guests that Margaret is actually Andrew's boss. Joe argues with how he complained about her all this time only to bring her along as his girlfriend. Andrew corrects him that they are going to get married. Joe is shocked to hear this, and Andrew goes on to announce their engagement. Hearing the news, the family calls for a celebration. Andrew spots his ex-girlfriend, Gertrude, and introduces her to Margaret. She congratulates them and asks how Andrew proposed to Margaret. The family gather around to hear the story as well. Margaret and Andrew try coming up with an insane story, and the family ask them to kiss for real. They try kissing to please the family, but Margaret feels some tingle in her. After this, Grace and Gammy take them to Andrew's room for them to stay, and Gammy even present her magic blanket to help with baby making. They leave them for the day, and Andrew sleeps on the floor. In the morning, Margaret gets a call and goes out to take the call. She leaves the door open, and the pet dog follows her out. Soon, an eagle dives down to catch it, and worried, Margaret throws her phone at the eagle, and it drops the dog, but it comes back to take her phone away. Feeling bad for saving the dog, she carries the dog, asking the eagle to drop her phone. Gammy and Grace see her, thinking that Margaret is playing with the dog. Andrew comes down, and he is shocked for what he sees. Gammy tells him that they have plans for the day with her. Andrew lets Margaret know that the phone can be arranged the next day, and informs that his mom and Gammy have plans for her. Later, Joe apologizes to Andrew for the day before, but given that no one knew that their son was even dating, he doesn't want to be blamed for anything. Following this, Joe asks Andrew to take care of the family businesses. Andrew leaves in anger since Joe doesn't approve of his work, which makes him happy. At this time, the Paxton ladies take Margaret to the local strip club where Ramon is performing. The ladies make Margaret take the stage and enjoy the event, but Margaret has had her fill soon and goes outside for some air. Gertrude follows her out and shares how they broke up since Andrew wanted to leave for New York, and she didn't want to. She leaves after congratulating her to get a guy like Andrew. Soon the party comes to a close, and Margaret returns home with Grace and Gammy. They notice Andrew butchering an old canoe by the shore. As they head inside, Grace gives Joe a handful since Andrew might leave them for good because of him. Margaret leaves upstairs to take a shower as she hears their conversation. Andrew, with his headphones on, enters the house and goes upstairs as well. Margaret forgot to take a towel, and the dog comes in barking at her. Andrew, still with his headphones on, heads to the balcony to take off his clothes and heads inside. At this time, Margaret manages to lock the dog inside and walks out to bump into Andrew, who is naked as well. They go their separate ways, and that night they have trouble sleeping. Margaret asks him what's the deal between him and his father, but he refuses talking about it. However, Margaret shares her life story, and they have an honest heart-to-heart conversation and laugh themselves to sleep. The next morning, Margaret wakes up to Grace waiting at the door. Andrew joins her on bed, and as Grace enters the room, Joe follows her in as well. They announce that they have planned for them to marry tomorrow according to Paxton family tradition in their barn. The acting couple decline since it is Gammy's birthday tomorrow, but Gammy herself comes in asking for them to marry before she dies. With that thrown out there, Margaret and Andrew agree to get married. After they exit the room, Andrew freaks out out, saying that they will be crushed if they ever find out that the whole thing is a sham. Margaret comforts him that everything will be fine, and she gets up to bring Andrew his coffee and bread. Andrew is surprised to see her act this way, and she herself is too, so she heads outside for a breather. She finds a bicycle and takes it for a ride to clear her thoughts. When she stops, she hears a voice, and following it, she finds someone performing some kind of a ritual. Going further down, she finds that it is Gammy, who calls Margaret to join her. Gammy starts the ritual, and Margaret follows her but soon gets too into it. At this time, Andrew, walking by, finds Margaret dancing like crazy along with Gammy. He tells her that her phone arrived and asks her to join him to go to town. They visit the store sometime later, and she gets her phone. Then, she wants to use a computer, and Andrew finds her an ancient internet cafe, and seeing Gertrude outside, he leaves to talk with her. Margaret notices them and feels bad for him. As they return, Grace and Gammy come looking for Margaret and takes her away. Gammy hands her the family wedding dress and checks the measurements for the big day. Grace asks if they could visit them in New York for the holidays, but Margaret says that she would love to come here instead. Hearing this, Grace tears up, and following this, Gammy hands her the family gem that's been handed down for more than 150 years. Margaret feels bad about cheating them, but she doesn't have the courage to come clean. After business is done, Margaret heads out to find Andrew in the boat. She hops in and takes the wheel and rides away. Andrew is perplexed to find her act that way, and she tells him that she forgot what it's like to have a family since she was 16. She freaks out, thinking of what would happen if his family found out. Andrew takes the wheel only for her to fall off when he makes a turn. He realizes only a little later and heads back to save her. When they return home, Joe takes them inside the barn and they find Gilbertson waiting there. Gilbertson gives Andrew his final chance to come clean, but Andrew still holds their story and leaves the place, inviting him for the wedding the next day. After they reach the room, Margaret asks one last time if he still thinks it is right for him to cheat his family, and he tells she would do the same for him. Soon Gammy comes looking for Andrew to leave Margaret alone for the night and takes away the baby-making blanket. The next day, the family is assembled in the barn, and Margaret walks down the aisle joined by Gammy. Ramon acts as their officiant, and as he begins his address, Margaret interrupts him. She turns around to confess the truth behind the wedding. She starts with how wonderful Andrew is, and with how hard he worked. She threatened him with ruining his career and forced him to marry her and lie to his family. She apologizes since it is not easy to ruin someone after finding how wonderful they are, and leaves the place, leaving everyone speechless. Gammy and Grace question Andrew, but he goes after Margaret to find her gone with a farewell letter for him. As he reads it, Gertrude comes looking for him and advises him to go after Margaret, who is now on her way back to New York along with Gilbertson. Andrew heads out planning to go after Margaret, but Joe stops him and Gammy has a heart attack. She is evacuated on a plane as the family watches, and on the plane, she leaves her last words for Andrew and Joe and gets back up to let them know it was the only way she knew to take them to the airport. She forces the pilot to change course, but as they land the plane Margaret is on takes off. Gammy and Grace feel bad and let Joe know that Andrew and Margaret actually loved each other but haven't conveyed their feelings. Back in New York, Margaret is packing up her office. She takes care of her stuff alone, and as she walks out, she notices Andrew come looking for her. He starts with how he hated her a few days ago, but during their time back home, he really came to love her. The whole office goes in awe hearing the story, but Margaret feels he is too good for her. But Andrew pushes through with how much he wants them to be together and kisses her. Later, they meet Gilbertson to inform their engagement, but for real this time, and he starts the process where Andrew's family is interviewed. Andrew and Margaret are questioned, however, they get every question wrong. Let me know what you think about this crazy boss and assistant in the comments, and I will see you again with another story like this. Until then, this is your host from Movie Recap signing off.